Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives. This is Jess. And before we jump into our conversation, I really want to do Margaret Cho justice. Margaret Cho is a stand-up comedian and an actress. She rose from very humble beginnings, born to Korean immigrants in San Francisco, where she was almost born into the gay community. She has no less than 8 stand-up comedy specials, which were filmed and released as feature films. She starred in an ABC sitcom called All American Girl, which was created for her, and she played herself. We're going to go really deep into that whole story. She's appeared on an iconic episode of Sex and the City. It's the season 3 premiere, the one where Carrie falls as she's walking down a fashion runway. She was Emmy nominated for 30 Rock, and she was a regular on Fashion Police with Joan Rivers. I have been an enormous fan since I was in college, and I talked to Margaret about that. And today I have the amazing honor of chatting with Margaret Cho. I'm with Margaret Cho. Hey, Margaret.
Hey.
How are you today? Where are you?
I'm at my home in Los Angeles.
I imagine it's been difficult not being able to tour. I know you were actually on tour
Yes.
in the middle of doing some stand-up when the pandemic hit.
Yes.
How has it been adapting?
It's really hard. I mean, it's really sad, actually, because I really miss it. I mean, it's the one constant in my life is touring and doing shows, and that's really weird.
Your seminal one-woman show, your stand-up film, I'm the One That I Want, was so influential when I was first coming out. My first introduction to you was through my best friend, and I'm the One That I Want had just come out on DVD. And together we went to, it was like a screening, I think, of I'm the One That I Want, and you were signing DVDs here in New York City.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he gave me the book, the original book that you wrote.
Oh.
And since then, I made it a point. I mean, pretty much you were on tour consistently for the next 15, 20 years. And I saw you perform at the Beacon Theater at Town Hall in New York City. I saw you in Provincetown.
Mm-hmm.
I saw you 2 years ago at the Ice Palace in Fire Island.
That's great. That's wonderful.
I've just been following you ever since.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, can you believe that? Does it feel like it's been 20 years since I'm the One That I Want?
It's weird because it feels like a long time and then it feels like it isn't. Because we've just been in motion and there's so much change, but there's also not been that much change. It's weird. In terms of social change and how far we've come in terms of gay rights, in terms of feminism, in terms of race, I feel like we've gone forward, and in a lot of ways we've gone backwards. And we've got to catch up and then go back and catch up and go back. It's always an ever-changing thing. And I feel like some things are getting better and getting worse. It's always like, where are we? I don't really know. It's hard to know.
Mm-hmm. You know, since that one-woman show, you really were you are one of the most prolific writer comedians out there. I mean, having produced 7 one-woman shows, stand-up specials since I'm the One That I Want, all of which, by the way, they're all on iTunes. The Notorious CHO and Beautiful, Assassin, all of these. You're an actress. You've been in tons of television and film, a musician. You're like a true artist. In spite of all of this, you say that you invented the cancellation. You invented cancel culture.
When you get canceled, when you understand getting canceled, like, I really get that. Like, I really stood up against the Bush administration and then really got in trouble for it. Oddly, being very canceled for that is really funny.
Can you point to a specific instance where you deemed yourself having been quote unquote canceled?
Well, there was one time where I was like invited and then disinvited to the Democratic National Convention. And I think it happened, I can't remember which one it was, but it was like it was like one of the early 2000s Democratic National Conventions where it was really upsetting. And it was like a sort of affective cancel culture where it was like, she's going to be too controversial to come here because she's going to talk about this and this and this or whatever. At that point, we weren't looking towards diversity as being a strength. Democratic point of view used to be very homogeneous and very white. It was very white. It was very cis male. Even the gay community presented themselves as it was still very white male. So it was kind of like there was this thing of it was like we were going to be white men even though we were gay. And it's not like that anymore. I think that now we realize diversity is our strength. And so, but in the early 2000s, there was a real sense of needing to want to fit in still. So that's when I really sort of felt that was where the point of like cancellation really kind of came to me as being sort of a painful thing, which is so funny now to think about because diversity now is much more of a strength than
100%.
Yeah.
I want to just go through that incredible time period where you really were, it felt like you were like the it girl, right? When The One That I Want came out. And I remember in watching that, you really were telling your story. Like the thing that really sticks out to me is you recounting the story of basically in 1994, you got your own sitcom on ABC that was based on your life growing up in the US with Korean immigrant parents. And you recount the network exec at ABC telling you that you were going to be a star. And you call your mom and your mom is so excited. And you basically go through exactly what happened, like in the aftermath of all of that. Can you sort of just like summarize what that time period was like? What did it truly feel like?
Well, it really felt like this thing of like, oh, well, you can finally achieve this dream that everybody says that is impossible. You know, growing up, I always wanted to be an actress and I wanted to be a comedian and I wanted to be in the movies and in television. But all of the messages that I was seeing, like I never saw Asian people on TV. There was just no way that it could happen. And no matter how entertaining I was in front of my friends or family, there was just no possibility that could possibly occur. And so it just never seeing evidence of it, you know, nobody was encouraging me in that way. And also, I was also like doing comedy. And so in comedy, I was very successful just because there was never a sense of having to cast me in anything. So I had my own kind of way of like going about things. But once I became in charge and I could be in like this TV show, then it was like this thing of like, oh, I can finally do it. But the one thing is like, you have to lose weight to be in the show. Mm-hmm. But that was like the one thing where I couldn't actually be myself to play myself. And that was like the one thing that I was like, you have to do this or else you can't do the show. And you have to do this very quickly or else you can't do the show. And that was really like, that was really scary. So, you know,
what did they specifically want from you? Did they want you to get down to a specific size, like a size 8, say a size 6, whatever it was?
I think it was just like you have to lose weight as quickly as possible. I think they didn't realize how fat I was, quote unquote, how fat I was, or they didn't realize that the standard of my weight had to adhere to what their standard of beauty was. Like, I think they didn't realize because they didn't know what their sort of standard was because I wasn't white. You know, and so they're like, we don't really understand what category she would be in because she's not white. She's not necessarily a teeny bopper. You know, I wasn't like a child. I was like an early 20s woman. So this was also sort of like, well, if it's not a teenager and it's not, so because Friends hadn't happened yet. So we were sort of preceding Friends. So we were before this, we were actually like the season that Friends premiered, we were on the same season. So Friends wasn't exactly...
What other shows were on the air? Like, I imagine Seinfeld was on.
Seinfeld was on, but they were in their 30s. So they were about 10 years older than we were. My So-Called Life was the same season, and they were in their teens. So this was sort of the same, and it was the same network. We were in that league. So ABC was trying some different things that season. They were trying My So-Called Life, which was very risque for them. And
amazing show.
And they were already a hit with Roseanne. So, and I think that they were also starting with Ellen, who wasn't out yet.
Oh, we're gonna get there, don't worry.
Yeah. And then they were also starting with Grace Under Fire, which was starting to be a very, very big hit for them. So they were probably in their second season with them or something like that, very early on. So it was like this thing of like they were riding this high and they were trying to do some new things. And so that there was like this sort of feeling of like, well, we're going to try to hit this new market of like after adolescence, what is there? It's like, is there an extended period of teenage angst that Friends eventually became? But we don't know what that is, and we don't know what that body type looks like. And in the 90s, there was this real sort of emphasis on extended adolescence that really we now realize is grunge. But we didn't even know that. This precedes grunge. I mean, this is like 91.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what it looked like yet. It's interesting to look at sort of like break it down like sociologically. Oh, this is what it was. This is when they were just trying to figure out what CK1 was going to look like. They didn't know.
So how did this affect you psychologically? Like, what was the ultimate consequence of this edict that was being brought down upon you? I mean, did this just destroy your body image, your self-esteem? I know you dealt with
it was
tons
crazy.
of body issues.
Yeah.
Like, what was going on?
Well, it's crazy because it's like we also didn't eat any protein. We only ate like Entenmann's. You know, it's like so weird is when you don't eat any fat and you eat only Entenmann's. It's so freaky. Like to eat only like the non-fat pastries that have only sugar, that we would eat only like Entenmann's cake for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it was so, you would get so crazy because it was only sugar and you're starving. It was so nuts. And you're not really particularly gaining weight or losing weight, but you feel crazy.
I imagine it kind of felt like you were on Adderall or something.
So we were also trying to like take, I was also trying to take all sorts of weird drugs. You could get these weird pills from this doctor that was prescribing, and this was like, before we could get fen-phen, we were getting these weird pills from this delivery service in Burbank that would drop them off at the studios. So the PAs would go and they would get you drugs from like these different costume departments from they would just get you stuff from different places. So you would, and then sometimes you would get like mini thins from the 7-Eleven, which were like trucker speed, I guess. I don't know. But whatever, you would just take whatever you could get to just get your hunger down, and then eat a bunch of Entenmann's or eat a bunch of like frozen yogurt. But it would just make you hungrier. And it would just, I was just sick. Or get meal delivery services, which I think probably were maybe more helpful. But then the diet thing then was so weird because you just never were eating very many calories. So you were just always starving. And then they paid for like a trainer for a while. And I was like doing a lot of exercise. And then I lost a ton of weight. And that was like, I lost so much weight in such a short period of time. And then I was really so emaciated, and then I felt so sick all the time. So there was like a lot of like health problems going on, so I couldn't even enjoy like anything that was like being the star of the show or anything, because I was so focused on like trying to be thinner. It was like a Stephen King novel, really, like trying to be thinner, like trying to like be smaller. Like in order for me to make my body smaller, it's just it takes so much effort that I have no other energy to do anything else.
Did you start writing I'm the One That I Want as a reaction to everything they put you through, the cancellation of the show and just everything that it did to you psychologically? Was that like a direct response or reaction to what you had been through in the mid-90s?
I think so. I think stand-up comedy was just like the only thing that I could do. Like the stand-up comedy was like the one thing that I knew I could always do, that I enjoyed doing, that where all my friends were, that my life was about anyway. So
how did you get your start in stand-up? I mean, I know that you grew up in San Francisco, and your father was a comedy writer.
Yes.
Right?
And he wrote a lot of different kinds. He's always been he still is. He loves to write. It's his hobby and his sort of craft, and he's always encouraging me to write, but there's something about that, like our family's very strong with that. And We all do that. My grandfather did that too. So we're all kind of very big writers. And I just love stand-up comedy. Like I always loved the art form. And
tell me about your adolescence in San Francisco. Like I know your parents, were you first introduced to the gay community through the bookstore that your parents owned?
Yeah. Well, they bought the bookstore in 1977. It was a gay bookstore.
Why did they buy it?
My dad always wanted to have a bookstore like City Lights because he wanted a bookstore that was like a community hub that was, they would have like poetry readings and that would be sort of a political center in a neighborhood. And that bookstore happened to be for sale. And it was where a lot of political things were happening in the Castro, not the Castro, it was the Castro, but that was in the Polk district. So that was sort of the other gay neighborhood. The Polk and the Castro were the two big gay neighborhoods in San Francisco. It was ideal for him to buy, and he really loved it. He bought it, and we all worked there. I like spent most of my time just sitting in the aisles just reading all the time. And then I ended up getting, old enough to work there. It was so funny because we would have like these rolling racks or these like spinning racks of like gay romance novels like Cobalt and like Rouge, of like these like novels with like drawings of young men on the cover in like a tank top and cut off jeans by a lake. And it was like so beautiful. And then we had all those magazines like Drummer magazine and Honcho and Blue Boy magazine, all of that stuff. It's like pretty incredible, all the stuff we had. And then we had like Skin too, and like all those like fetish magazines. And then we also had like quite a lot of trans magazines. I remember like lots of different, a lot of different varieties of gay and lesbian and like different periodicals. Like I just remember like that huge variety and then also a lot of tattoo stuff. Ed Hardy, that's how I met him. He would come and sell Tattoo Time and Modern Primitives and all of his stuff that he was publishing there. So there was a lot of different kinds of like sort of alternative publications coming out of my dad's store. So that's how I learned about all of this different kinds of culture that was happening, which is great.
And I assume that's how you met your first gay friends and trans friends as well.
Yeah, they were working there for my dad. They were all getting tattoos. They were all getting full body tattoos from Ed Hardy. They were getting pierced. They were having all sorts of different life complications, having different kinds of relationships, polyamorous relationships, having lots and lots of different dramas, and there was a comedy club upstairs.
Fag hags are the backbone of the gay community. Without us, you're nothing. We have been there all through history, guiding your sorry ass through the Underground Railroad. Come on, girl, you need to hurry, come on. We went to the prom with you.
Polyamorous relationships, having lots and lots of different dramas, and there was a comedy club upstairs. So that's where I just started doing my first performances. There was a comedy club at this pub called the Rose and Thistle that was upstairs from the bookstore.
And what comedians were you like just a super fan of? Like who did you love in the day?
Paula Poundstone, who's probably still my favorite. Paula Poundstone is really the best. I mean, of anybody, and the most enduring and probably, the most brilliant. I've been watching her since the 80s. Like, yeah, she's just consistently amazing.
Who else did you look up to comedy-wise?
I think then until now, probably Dana Carvey. He's really incredible. Well, like nowadays, I really love Wanda Sykes. I've always really admired her. I think she's really an unbelievable comedian. Just awesome. Really, really funny. Somebody that's like my age would be like Dave Chappelle is really incredible. He's really a phenomenal guy too. I love Scott Thompson from Kids in the Hall. He's a really great guy. I actually saw him in January, not that long ago, I think there's just so many great people in comedy that I just love the art form of it still. And there's a particular joy in gay comedians that I take to, especially, but yeah, they tend to be my favorites.
So there was the comedy club was above your parents' bookstore, and just one day you went to like an open mic. Like, how did you figure out? Like, how did you how did you figure it out?
I just always watched it on television. Joan Rivers on television, like pretty obsessively. Like when I was a real little kid, I really loved her. And then I would watch all of the game shows. I loved like Paul Lynde, and I loved all of these dumb game shows. Like I just loved them. And then I loved like when Saturday Night Live and all of the like SCTV is like my favorite.
When Comedy Central had the Upright Citizens Brigade,
yes,
it was Matt Besser and Amy Poehler
yes.
before she got in SNL. That is an underrated classic.
So great. It's so great. I loved that era. I also love like Old Kids in the Hall. Like I love all that really great era of sketch, and it's really beautiful and really unique and really different and really interesting. I used to call up this radio station and I would win comedy show tickets, and I would go to like these like shows that were like underage, but you could go. And so I'd win them. So I'd go see like Ellen would do these shows for like where she was like the opener, and when you're like the opener you make like $50. So I would always see Ellen and Rob Schneider, early 80s.
How did you discover or find your voice? Like, when did you first start impersonating your mom and making that part of your act, and just eventually making a living doing stand-up?
It was really early on. Like I started in 1984. Yeah, it was very early on. Like I started, my earliest sets were probably in 1983 and 82, 83, 84. And then I started to make a pretty good living around 87.
And what were you talking about in the early days? What were you talking about on stage?
Just like about how young I was and how I was still in school and being a kid. And like, it was just about being really young and being in this club and how weird it was and how like it was a place I probably shouldn't be in. It was really just about being young and how I shouldn't be there mostly. And about doorbell ditch, shit about being a child, which is probably appropriate. It kind of sort of developed more into who I was. The late 80s, then I was like, oh, I'm a lesbian. And then I wouldn't stop coming out as a lesbian for like 2 years. From like 1989 to 1991, I wouldn't stop coming out as a lesbian.
What do you mean by that? What do you say?
Well, like I got these really long jean shorts. Like I got jean shorts like that were like to my knees, and then I cut them off at the knees, and then I was like, I wouldn't stop coming out. Like I got like an Annie DeFranco album, and then I got like these long jean shorts, and then I wouldn't stop coming out. That weird period between 1989 and 1991 where you wouldn't stop coming out? That was just like a weird, like you put on a bike helmet and then you wouldn't take it off. Like that kind of weird. It's just weird. Like, like I had like a bike chain and a bike helmet and like long cut off jeans, and I wouldn't stop coming out. And that was like those 2 years. It's just gross.
I'm obsessed. That is so funny.
And I went through this whole thing. I was like, am I gay? Am I straight? And I realized I'm just slutty. Where's my parade?
Was there a camaraderie between you and the other famous, because you were out, very, very out as being bisexual by that point.
Yeah.
Was there a camaraderie between you and the other famous yet closeted queer women before they wound up coming out? I'm thinking of like, Sandra Bernhard was always out, but people like Rosie, Judy Gold, Sandra Bernhard,
always.
Leah Delaria, Wanda Sykes.
Always.
Like you guys were all tight.
Always. We're always tight. Always. Ellen too. I think that like if you're queer, there's always a closeness.
What did you think of the investigation that wound up happening this summer?
Well, it's like, I think she definitely is scary. I'm still scared of Ellen. I think if everybody should be scared of Ellen. I would have no idea what it would be like to work for that.
You were saying how Dana Carvey was one of your influences and you loved him. Was SNL ever a dream of yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great, but it's taken. They've have been on 40 something years, and they finally have an Asian American cast member,
Bowen Yang,
who I love. Who's really great cast member, who's really, really funny. They finally sort of embraced the idea of diversity, which is good for them, finally. They've had, I think, 2 Asian hosts, three over 40 years, which is not great, but, they're getting there.
It's actually very surprising to me that you never hosted.
I know. I would love to. So we'll see. That would be great.
But you were never invited to audition or because
No.
you were one of those landmark stand-ups, and every stand-up sort of came through the door of SNL, either to audition or to host.
To host, yeah.
That's very strange.
I know. I would have loved to, and I would still love to. So, I have pilfered the costume department for a couple of different things. So I've gone through. I've definitely utilized their costume department on a couple of occasions for different things. I've stolen Amy Poehler's wig for 30 Rock a couple of times, and for the Rosie O'Donnell show a couple of times. So years and years ago.
Tell me about the experience on the Rosie O'Donnell show.
I lost my luggage when I was going to do her show, and it was I flew in that night, and I was going to do her show in the morning. This is in the early 2000s, and so I had to go into the 30 Rock costume department at SNL and steal an outfit, because I only had sweats. So
that's amazing.
So they let me steal.
Do you know what costume you wound up stealing, or was it just clothes?
It was just clothes. It was just some stupid miniskirt or whatever.
You were not, speaking of SNL, you were nominated for an Emmy because you were a recurring character on 30 Rock. You played Kim Jong-il.
Yes, and Kim Jong-un.
And you did a surprise appearance when Tina Fey and Amy hosted the Golden Globes. You were there performing. What was that whole experience like?
Oh, it was fun.
Which I guess working so close, you clearly have a great relationship with Tina.
Yes, she's
How
great.
How did you first meet her, and what's your friendship with her?
I met her on 30 Rock, and so she just asked me to do that, and that was great. And then I did a pilot with her some years later. I think she's amazing, and I really enjoy. I just enjoy her and her work and her sense of humor, and I love what she does, and so hopefully I'll get to do something else with her. She's really amazing.
What was the pilot you did for Tina?
It was a really cool show. It was about a women's college that were finally admitting men, so it was a very funny. It was really, really. It was the first year of admitting men to an all-female college, and it was really hilarious. So it didn't go, and it was the same year that Kimmy Schmidt. They were doing 2 pilots, and one of them was Kimmy Schmidt, and this was the other one. It was really good. It was me and Fortune.
Oh my God, that would have been. That shocks me that didn't come to fruition.
I know, it was so good. Hopefully, we'll do it again. Something else.
Did Tina ever tell you about? Well, you probably know she has a house on Fire Island. Did she ever tell you about this script she wrote that took place on Fire Island? She had an idea for a show. I guess it never got made.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know about that?
No, I didn't know.
It's another lost idea.
I know. She has so many. She's such a great, prolific writer. She writes so much and does so much, But I really love her, and I really love what she's about.
We just mentioned Bowen Yang. For so long, you were by far, perhaps, one of the only truly visible, very successful entertainers that endured for over 20 years in the Asian American community. Mm-hmm. Is your mind a little blown now of just sort of the current moment that's going on? Or are you kind of it's about time? Where do you stand on Fresh Off the Boat? Of course, Bowen being on SNL and hugely successful. Ali Wong, Crazy Rich Asians, Awkwafina. How does it feel all of these years later, after All American Girl, after you were the star, to see this representation?
Oh, I'm so excited. It is about time, and it's so great. And it's finally the right thing. You know, I don't know why it's taken so long, but I'm so glad that they're here, and I hope that it's just going to create more and more, and I want more and more, and I'm so glad they're all so talented, and it's so exciting, and they're all so incredibly grateful to me, and to and so vocal about it, and I'm just so enamored of them, and it's really amazing.
Talk to me about first of all, how is your mom doing?
She's doing great. They're in San Diego. My parents are really good. They're very healthy, which is really awesome. And they're healthier than me. They do a lot of like weight bearing exercise, which kind of blows my mind. They carry their own golf clubs everywhere. They can't really play because they're not playing golf right now. The club is closed, but they're carrying the clubs across the field. So they're like really very into like carrying things. They're very like health conscious. They're super happy.
That's
and
great.
they're doing well. I think it's definitely a harder time not to be able to like travel as much, because that's what the thing that they love the most is they love traveling all over the world. But I know that we'll all get back to that soon enough.
Tell me about the origin of impersonating your mom in your act. Like, when did you first start to imitate her and make fun of her in that way?
Well, I was doing that like as a really young kid. Like that's a really an Asian American tradition, is making fun of your parents. That's something that we all do, I think, as a group. Like Asian American kids are very famous for doing that. Like we all have that as a legacy. I mean, it's just part of Asian American culture. That's what we're about. And so doing that is really embedded in our our psyche, and we have fun doing that. So that's definitely something that I've always been familiar with, and bringing it into my comedy was very natural that way.
She does things that every mom does. She leaves long ass phone messages on my machine. Boop. Hi, it's mommy. I have to tell you 2 things. Number 1, grandma and grandpa gonna die. I don't know when they're gonna die, but sometime. So mommy just tell you now, so when they die, you're not surprised. Don't be surprised when they die. But you don't have to tell them. Don't say, oh, mommy say you're gonna die. Don't say like that. Don't say like that. That's not nice. You don't have to say like that. They know already. Number 2 is, did you get the shampoo I sent you? Because I sent you the shampoo that is good for fine hair. And you just use a little bit, and then you lather and rinse. But don't repeat. You don't have to repeat because that's wasting. You don't have to repeat. I don't know why they put it on the bottle. This is a ladle and then rinse and repeat. Why you don't have to repeat? Don't repeat. Because only white people repeat. Don't be like white people.
How does your mom react to sort of the, how like you don't just cross the line. You do away with all boundaries whatsoever. Like, how does your mom, what is her tolerance for like sitting through one of your shows when you're, I remember one of your shows you did basically like half naked, showing like the tattoos on your butt and all of that. Like, what is she like? Can you do like how does she react to that?
I think she's fine with it. She doesn't really mind all that. She's just like, I think she's very used to like whatever the outrageousness is. Kind of like, I don't know if there's a limit to it. I don't know if I've actually crossed it. She's really got a great sense of humor also.
Throughout the 80s and the 90s, who did you call upon for advice? Like when you needed help or wanted to run things by, or if you were struggling, who were maybe just the well-known comics out there who were a real source of comfort and just sage advice for you?
Well, a lot was Joan Rivers before she died, for sure. Definitely, if I was frustrated about something, I would ask her for advice. In comedy, that was the one person that I could ask, and she would know. She was very generous about that. And she was also very smart about things. And really, also very open to hear whatever, and really very candid. I thought she was really great to go to. Nowadays, it's hard to know. Oddly, people a lot of time come to me to ask.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
And it's mostly people in comedy ask me about things, and that's good too, because I do have some knowledge about some things.
What was the best advice that Joan gave you?
I think that it was just like not to take anything too seriously, that it doesn't really matter, that none of it really matters, that it's all going to be fine. And it's true. It doesn't really matter. Nothing really matters. It's like all going to be fine. And it's like, and that they're always going to want you because you're funny. And that's really, really important to remember, is that being funny is like a resource that's always needed. And that's really important to the world. And it's a rare resource, and it's kind of like one thing that can't really be replicated anywhere, and it's very hard to create, and it's hard to figure out how to do it artificially.
How do you think meaning Joan, would have reacted to the Trump presidency and also the pandemic? Like, how do you think she would have dealt with everything from 2016 through 2020 and now leading into another election? Like how would she be reacting to all of this?
Well, I'm sure that she would be loving the social distancing and being very like stand off to everything, but also from a socially distanced place being very wry and very funny about it all, and have a gorgeously bejeweled mask and be really fabulous about it. I mean, I think it would have been a lot of fun, actually, to have her commentary through it out, because she obviously had a lot of things to say about Donald Trump anyway, and certainly a lot of things about everything. So I'm sad to not hear that. I think she would have been great. She would have been great to have around.
When you were in the 80s and the 90s, actually even all through the 2000s, when you were like heavily on tour for well over a decade, when you would come to New York City and, P-Town and Fire Island, like these were like big stomping grounds for you, what was the nightlife like? Like, did you used to like go out after the shows? Like, where would you hang out? Were you hitting up like the gay bars and like going out?
I used to go to like the big sort of burlesque places and watch dance stuff, or we would go to like the Cock, which was like very much like dancey things. We'd go see like Ryan Heffington dance, or some of our burlesque fun people dance, like Dirty Martini or Julie Atlas Muse dance. Or like in the 90s, we would go to like the meatpacking district when all the S&M clubs were there. So there would be parties by the Lesbian Sex Mafia at the Vault or the Hellfire Club, like all of those places. Mm-hmm. That was a long time ago. So that's what I remember doing. I would do shows at Caroline's and then go to these like dungeons like Paradise Lost. I remember going one time and there was a guy that would wear a full papal Pope's costume, but he was in the dungeon. Like he was like a full Pope's outfit, and he
dressed like the Pope.
Dressed like the Pope. But he was like one of the guys in the dungeon, but dressed like the full papal costume, like, and then he had a cockatoo who was super mean, like a mean bird, which I love birds, but they had a really, really mean bird.
And tell me about your times, like all the times you've spent on Fire Island. Tell me about the times that you've spent on Fire Island, like what those experiences have been like over all these years.
I love Fire Island. I mean, I love Fire Island. I remember my first shows doing them on actually the Pines. And then later on, after the fire, oh, it's so sad.
Yes.
Doing them at the Ice Palace, which are great too, of course. And I love Fire Island, and I love, but the great walk across the meat rack.
Oh yeah.
With going like a long time ago when I would go, you would have to walk across, and then you'd have a flip phone to go across to get through. And it was just it was an innocent time, a fun time. I loved going out there. I love Fire Island. I love summer gay life, and I missed it this year. Like it's like summer didn't happen because I didn't have. Provincetown is the one real place that I go. Though Provincetown is my true summer home. I want to buy a cemetery plot in the cemetery there. Actually, that's where because it's only $500, and Ryan Landry, who's like my best friend, has already bought his, and I want to buy one next to him, and it's only $500, so he's already bought his. So I was thinking I was going to buy one, but next to him, but I want to buy 12 so that they're in the shape of a clock, so we could get 12 gays, so we could have a sundial.
I love it. That's amazing. That is absurd, and I love it.
Isn't that stupid? It's so dumb, but it's like, and I want to be the 12, but then we could have like the 12 gays, so we have like a clock, but just a big gay sundial. I think it would be nice to have there. It's a nice cemetery, and it's right by it's kind of by the water, and it would be great to have like some nice cemetery sex, some guys to have some cemetery sex over by your grave.
I do want to talk to you about a little bit of Bravo stuff before we jump into Bravo, and I want to get your feeling on the Housewives. I do just want to mention, do people still talk to you about your Sex and the City episode? Because it's one of, to me, my favorite things ever.
Oh,
do you still
thank
get approached about that?
Yes, totally. I just saw Willie Garson we just talked about it the other day. And yes, I get asked about it pretty often. And it's an iconic show. Amazing. And everybody's in that episode. I mean, it's an incredible episode. And yeah, for sure. I mean, I had such a great time on that show, and it's a New York that doesn't really exist anymore, and it's a time that was so different. And yeah, I loved it. I loved being on it. It's great also to be on a show that is so iconic and of such a great time. It's really cool.
Did you ever watch the gay shows that came out, like Queer as Folk and the L Word? Like,
yes,
you did?
Of course, yes, of course.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised that they never had you on the L Word.
Well, I was supposed to be on one of the episodes, and then because they were going to come to a show of mine, and then there was a whole thing that happened, but it was a big problem, and then unfortunately, it never occurred, which is sad because I would have loved to. But they all, the cast all came to my concert when I did a show in Vancouver, which was very exciting because I did a show and then I could see them all were there. It was like all.
Oh my God!
So exciting.
You loved which one were you more into between Queer as Folk and the L Word? Which one were you more like emotionally attached to?
Well, the L Word, of course. I mean. Yeah, but it's such a great show. I loved all of it, but the L Word has always got a special place in my heart for sure.
Same. All right, I want it. So at the very beginning, before we started, I asked you, just what your experience has been, because I know you did have your own reality show, which I'm not sure if it was how much reality or if it was like scripted, soft scripted,
it was
whatever.
Mostly scripted, yes. Most of it, I think most of it, a lot of that stuff is pretty scripted. I think.
The Housewives is not scripted. It's heavily produced, but it's not scripted.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You seem skeptical. You're like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
What has your experience? So, tell me what you know of Bravo and the Housewives.
Well, I know that I have been around a couple of them. A couple of the ladies. I've been at a couple of events. I've done Watch What Happens Live a couple of times. I've been at events where Lisa Vanderpump has been in attendance. I've been at the restaurant. I've been at
which restaurant did you go
Vanderpump? Vanderpump?
Which
Pump?
one?
Oh, Pump.
Pump. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Been to Pump.
The gay brunch spot.
Yes. And I have been. Let's see where. Oh, and I've seen the dogs. I've been to the dog place. I bought her some things at the dog place. The dog.
You have the cutest dog.
The cute. She's really cute. She's being bad right now. Because she wants to play.
I remember you were on Watch What Happens Live with Kristen Doty from Vanderpump Rules. Do you remember her?
Oh, and she was also on an episode of Fashion Police, which I was on.
She was?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, this, again, ties back to Joan. Were you on Fashion Police with Joan, or was it after?
I've been on it with Joan, and then when Joan passed away, I took over her position.
What was that experience at E? Because I know Fashion Police was sort of in a crisis.
It was really, it was great. I mean, I really loved doing that show. It was Joan's favorite thing to do, and I really loved carrying that torch for her. And we had the best time doing that show. We had such a good time doing it, and we laughed so much, and it really was a great send off for her, and we missed her a lot. I wish that we could have done more, but it made me really miss her. And but we had fun, and I wish that we could do more. I mean, it seems like something that we could keep doing, because it's something that it just seems like it's like people always want to talk about fashion. People always want to talk about what people are wearing. So maybe we can bring it back sometime.
I love it.
Yeah.
Margaret, you're the best. I know that I saw that you actually have a couple of movies coming out. What's coming up? Where can people see you next?
Well, I'm doing a movie. I'm going to start shooting a movie actually next month. And it's with Charles Bush, who's a really amazing artist, a really funny, really amazing guy. So that's happening. I'm in a movie that is an Asian American it's beautiful. It's an animation movie. It's going to start on Netflix really soon. It's with Ken Jeong and John Cho and Philippa Sue. It's called Over the Moon. It's beautiful, and that should start really soon.
And there's another movie written by Nicole Payon that you have a little part in, that Friendsgiving.
Oh yeah,
movie?
yeah. It's with actually with Fortune and with Wanda, and that's really fun.
Amazing.
It's real. I don't know when that's coming out, but that should be soon too. Kat Dennings is in
Nicole,
it too. Yeah.
Who else is
Kat
in it?
Dennings.
Oh, amazing.
She's beautiful.
I know Nicole Payon from 100 years ago, and it's amazing that she's getting this huge, pretty big movie made wherever it'll land. That's super exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really good.
Awesome. Where can everyone follow you online and listen to your show?
People can find me at Margaret Cho on Twitter, at Margaret_Cho. I'm on margaretcho.com.
I imagine you'll start touring again once everything opens up.
I will. I can't wait to get back to doing that.
Margaret, you're the best. Guys, you can follow me, JessXNYC. Be sure to follow the show account, Hot Takes Deep Dives, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
I wish Britney would come out. Wouldn't that be hot if she was a lesbian? I loved when she shaved her head. I thought she looked like a hot baby Butch Dyke. Just came out of the closet. Her name's Dylan. I think Britney Spears is doing a little bit better. She's no longer handcuffed to a stretcher. When I saw that, I was like, oh, girl. I've been there.